Namaskar, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday meditation. Nice to be with you again. We are going to start another kosha today. We'll be beginning our exploration of the Manomaya kosha, which is called the subtle layer of the mind. Subtle in the sense that it's where we human beings do a lot of our reflection. So most of our philosophies and theologies, scientific theories have come from our work with the Manomaya kosha. Today we'll be looking at one particular aspect of this kosha, which is self-study or swadhyaya. So thankfully we human beings have a mind that can analyze, that can probe deeply into something to find a deep truth, to find deep meaning for ourselves in our lives. And that's the practice of swadhyaya, and that's one of the functions of the Manomaya kosha. So I'm going to share my screen. I've got a little presentation for this. It's the first time I'm using this in StreamYard. So let's see how it goes. All right, we're getting there. Here we are. I'm assuming you can all see that. All right. So swadhyaya, contemplative study for insight and action. Let's break down the word itself, the word swadhyaya. So sva is the self, and dhyaya comes from a root dhyai, which means contemplation. So it's contemplation on the deep teachings in order to transform oneself spiritually. It's contemplation on the nature of self and the nature of life to further one's evolution as a spiritual being. So it's a very important practice. If we look historically through the yoga scriptures, we find its origin in this Taittiriya Upanishad, which dates back to the 6th century before Christ, or before the Common Era, so about 2,500 years ago. And in this Upanishad, it's given in the sense of learning and sharing forever. Learning and sharing forever. So I'm going to break down those words also. So let's look at the forever part. Well, I guess first of all, forever in the sense that our journey never ends, right? We can never wake up one morning and say, I've arrived. I've become my perfect self. It's a process that's continuous. In fact, there's a story of a couple of disciples in a forest speaking to their guru, their spiritual teacher, and asking, how long is it going to take for us to achieve liberation? So the first one asks the guru, and the guru says, you look at all those leaves on all those thousands of trees in the forest. As many leaves as there are on the trees, that's as many incarnations that you'll have to undergo in order to achieve liberation. And the fellow was disgusted that it would take so long, and he walked away in a huff. And so the second disciple asked the same question, and it was the same answer. And the second disciple said, "Oh, wonderful. You mean like after all those incarnations, I'm going to get liberation? Oh, I'm so happy today." So obviously the second disciple has a more positive perspective on life. But the process is a long process, a long and beautiful process. Hence, this practice is forever. It's something that should be incorporated into life all the time. It's one of the niyamas, and the jamas and the niyamas, these are the spiritual ethical principles, and they go on forever too. It's not as if we can ever wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, I'm a really, really good person now. I don't need to work on myself at all. I've become a perfected being. I'm ethically pure." No, we keep working on ourselves day in and day out. So Swadhyaya is one of the individual observances, the niyamas, which are designed to help us perfect our inner self, so that when the inner self gets into the field of action, it's more impactful, more effective, more sublime. Swadhyaya is something that is common to human society in different cultures. In religious cultures in particular, it's something that is common to all religious cultures. So if we look at Buddhism, they have their 3 pragyas, or learning tools. And so one should read a text or listen to a spiritual teaching, contemplate it, reflect upon it, and then meditate upon it to further incorporate it into one's being. So it becomes like cellular knowledge, or it becomes woven into one's DNA. In Catholicism, they have what's called Lectio Divina. Lectio Divina. And so they have a process whereby they will read the text in order to understand it, understand the meaning of the words. And then they meditate upon that text in order to understand its relevance. So how is this relevant for me in my life right now? And then they pray. So they pray to God. And so this then is a dialogue. And so, God, what are you telling me? Like, what do you want of me through this? And then they contemplate, which is to sort of think, well, how can I take these teachings that God wants me to absorb and present them to the world through my being? So then our Swadhyaya is part of a whole network of swadhyayas, if you will, that have woven themselves through human society. So let's look at swadhyaya from our yogic perspective. I mean, it's similar to what I've just explained regarding Catholicism and Buddhism. So first of all, we read a text, or we listen. Now, of course, what we read could be anything that's inspirational. It's a wisdom teaching. It's something that's going to inspire us to move a little closer to our ideal selves. And then we contemplate. And so contemplation has to be slow. And what's, I think, characteristic about Swadhyaya is that it's not consumptive, right? We don't, because when I'm reading the paper, I'm consuming headlines. I may be skimming through the headlines one after the other, or maybe I'm just reading the first sentence of each paragraph. And I guess in our modern eras, we've gotten so used to consuming, we Google everything in order to learn about it. So we are kind of consumers of knowledge. So contemplation is different. It's savoring something. It's, you know, when we eat, we don't just swallow, but we savor the taste. Maybe when we're, you know, tasting a really wonderful cold pressed juice, we savor it in the mouth before we swallow it. And so then the practice is a practice of contemplation. We give it time to percolate. We give it time to settle within ourselves. And this is crucial. Like, how does this resonate with me when we're reading something? What does this mean for me? How does this integrate itself into my life? And this needs space. It needs time. And I don't know about you, but I find it very enabling, very beautiful to just sit in a comfortable chair and to read something like line by line, slowly, slow reading, and just to allow it to be absorbed into my being, as if I'm in relationship with this teaching and observing how it feels in myself and how this teaching is actually integrating itself into me. So it's a very beautiful practice, but it has to be given time. And so I thought, regarding this contemplation, we could just use a poem of Rumi. So first of all, we read, right? And so when we read, we want to understand the meaning. Now here we don't have any words that are complicated that we probably have to look up in a dictionary. So the reading will be straightforward. So let me read. The garden of love is green without limit and yields many fruits, other than sorrow and joy. Love is beyond either condition, without spring, without autumn, it is always fresh. Now let's do the contemplation. I mean, we don't have a lot of time, but as I read it now, feel how it sits inside your body and your mind. How does this feel? How does it resonate with you? How does it meet you where you are in life right now? The garden of love is green without limit and yields many fruits other than sorrow and joy, and yields many fruits other than sorrow and joy. Love is beyond either condition. Love is beyond either condition. Without spring, without autumn, it is always fresh. Without spring, without autumn, it is always fresh. As human beings, we are blessed because the world, the libraries are full of wisdom teachings. There is no end to the inspiration that's been shared with all kinds of sages, past and present. It's simply taking the time to reflect. And the final point here, to share. So this is crucial when it comes to swadhyaya. There's a Chinese scholar, I'm forgetting the fellow's name, but he was talking about how one deals with the teachings. So for some people, teachings go in one ear and out the other, right? They don't stay, they don't stick, they don't integrate. And for other people, the teachings maybe go in through the ear or through the eyes, and they come out through the mouth. So people say, hey, guess what I read the other day, or guess what I heard the other day? But it's not shared in a very deep way. And there are those people for whom the teachings go through the ears, they go through the eyes, and they resonate in the mind, and then they percolate down into the body. They're absorbed into each of the cells. They become part of the DNA. They're woven into the fabric of one's being, and then they're expressed through every gesture, through every limb. So this, of course, is the ideal, that we live the teachings, that the teachings are fully integrated and we express them in our thoughts, in our words, in our actions. In fact, the ideal is that the teachings become such an intimate part of ourselves that we don't really have to think about them anymore. They just become a natural part of who we are. So we embody the teachings. That, of course, is the ideal. But in the meantime, we have to have ways in which we remember the teachings. And this is our challenge as human beings. We keep forgetting who we really are, what we're really supposed to do. And I was reading the magazine Tricycle the other day. It's a Buddhist magazine. It's wonderful. It's very wise. In itself, it's a good swadhyaya practice. And there was one author there who was talking about swadhyaya, and he was using the term pop-up. You know how when we're looking at our computer screens, we get sometimes annoyed by these pop-ups, trying to sell us something, for example. But he was talking about having pop-ups in the minds that embody the essence of some of these teachings. And I know in my guru's case that he would always try to distill teachings into maxims, or sayings. So there's one that pops up into my mind from time to time, which is subjective approach through objective adjustment. I have the tendency to get really absorbed in the social work I do. And then that pop-up comes, subjective approach, which means, hey, like you have to really make sure that you're meditating enough and working on yourself enough, building yourself so that when you go out into the world, which is the objective adjustment, you are strong enough and balanced enough in order to do the work effectively. So the most important is the subjective approach, is the development of oneself spiritually. And then one adjusts to the world in different ways. And so that's a pop-up that pops up when I need it. And so this is really wonderful, right? When one, say, is inspired by a certain teaching, and then one can distill it into a maxim, into a saying, and then it becomes one's pop-up. And when one needs it, when one is challenged in some way, then it pops up, and it's the reminder as to how one should approach a certain issue. Now, for the meditation today, what I'd like to do is this. I'm going to read this quote from my guru, Sri Sri Anandamurti. So I'll read it and we'll kind of just, I guess, absorb it together. And then we'll do the meditation, and then we'll come back to it. And we'll see whether the meditation, which is going to be on this theme that's expressed through this quote, whether the meditation has had an impact on how this quote resonates. So I'll read. Suppose there is a drop of water in an ocean. When the drop feels its unity with the ocean, the drop no longer remains as a drop. It becomes the ocean. When it feels its separation from the ocean, it is nothing but a drop of water. Similarly, when a human being feels unity with the supreme consciousness, he or she acquires immense vitality. This is yoga. So there we are, an exploration of Swadhyaya, the receiving of wise teachings and the application of those teachings into our daily life. And hopefully, as we saw with the meditation, that our interaction with the teachings is mutual. So the wiser we are, the more receptive we are, the more open we are, then the more able the teachings are presenting themselves to us and can be absorbed by us. And I think that's why this is one reason for it being a constant process. The Orthodox Jews will read the Old Testament for the entire life, always looking for a new light of wisdom within the text. As they evolve, then they will find deeper meaning within the text. And so this is the way it is. Hence, the process is continuous. So if anybody has any comments in the last 5 minutes or so that we have, let's see, here's one here. Chanting is really helpful for getting centered. There's no doubt about that. Because so much of the body and mind are involved. It's a whole being process. So yes, chanting, in fact, it's a good idea, maybe before even reading a spiritual text, before doing Swadhyaya, to chant as a way to prepare oneself. Any other comment from anybody about this topic? As I mentioned before, we human beings are so blessed, especially in these days, right, where we have access to the wisdom of all cultures, all religions, all philosophies, all sages. I mean, the accessibility now that we have to wisdom is unfathomable. It's just a question of putting it into practice. Anything else? Well, we will then close for the day. So best wishes to everybody. Have a wonderful week. Develop your pop-ups so that when you're facing a challenge, the wise teaching pops up and strengthens your ability to resolve the situation. All right, so then it's namaskar from me, goodbye from me, and all the best.